Pokemon TCGP, also known as Pokemon Trading Card Pocket, released on October 30th, 2024. And 2 days after its release, on November 1st, it had already surpassed 10 million downloads according to their tweet. And according to PocketGamer.biz, over $23.2 million in gross revenue were spent by players in the first 5 days of the game's release. Why is this new mobile game so successful? Pokemon TCGP is a mobile game with 2 core components: opening virtual Pokemon packs and battles. Currently, there are 3 packs that you can open: the Mewtwo, Charizard, or Pikachu packs from the Genetic Apex set. And you can pull anything from basic cards to the sick Chaser Mewtwo EX. And I'm definitely not saying this just so I can flex this card I pulled. The battle system consists of solo battles that you perform against the AI bots, or versus battles which you perform against your friends. The battle system in Pokemon TCG Pocket is simpler than the regular Pokemon trading card game battle system, with the winner only having to amass 3 points instead of the 6 that you would need for standard TCG. If you think of it from a game perspective, this game is really quite simple, and yet it has garnered so much success straight out the gate. So here's my theory as to why this game is so successful. It combines 3 extremely popular things, each with their unique flaws in terms of garnering a new player base, into one perfect game. Pokemon, a very nostalgic franchise, gacha games, which are ever growing in popularity, and friendship. Pokemon is a very beloved franchise and very nostalgic to many. The very first Pokemon game that came out was Pocket Monsters Red and Green, releasing in Japan in 1996. There later was a remade version that was released globally called Pokemon Red and Blue. The second generation of releases included titles like Pokemon Gold and Silver, with future generations coming out with different titles. The game performed phenomenally well, with Pokemon Red and Pokemon Blue amassing 200,000 downloads in the first 2 weeks of its release. And 4 million units were sold across the 3 titles in the US, according to the book Power Up: How Japanese Video Games Gave the World an Extra Life by Chris Kohler. In Japan, 12 million various Pokemon titles were sold in 1998. And for perspective of how grand a scale this is, another beloved franchise, Final Fantasy, sold 11 million copies of Final Fantasy VII worldwide between 1997 and 1998. So Pokemon, being a newer title at the time than Final Fantasy, really absolutely knocked it out of the park. So clearly Pokemon has done something right, capturing the hearts of gamers around the world. However, there is still something that serves as a barrier of entry, preventing more people from getting into the game, and that being money. The early Pokemon games all required a console to be played on, with early Pokemon games being designed for the Game Boy. The Game Boy Color, released in 1998, retailed for $79.98 at that time, which, accounting for inflation, converts to around 154 USD today. For non-gamers who did not already own a console, the idea that you need to not only purchase the game title, but purchase a console alongside of it to play the game is going to serve as a barrier entry, preventing more people who are not seasoned gamers from getting into the game. Another issue that serves as a barrier of entry is the ever-dwindling attention span of this generation. Research has indicated that attention spans has dropped from 2.5 minutes to just around 45 seconds. And this is according to a Wall Street Journal article by Gloria Mark titled "How to Restore Our Dwindling Attention Spans." Pokemon games run for a decent length, with Pokemon Emerald clocking in at around 31 hours, or 214 hours for Perfection. Diamond and Pearl, the longest Pokemon game title released in 2006, runs for about 40.5 hours of gameplay, or 260 hours if you're aiming for perfection. For generations that did not grow up around Pokemon, with the nostalgic pull being something that will serve as a driving factor to get you through playing the game, the new, younger generations without that nostalgic pull and their dwindling attention spans may find it hard to get started with a game like this. So, there are many barriers of entries to Pokemon games, including needing a console, money, and a shortening attention span. But there was a title that combated all of this, skyrocketing the creator's evaluation to over $9 billion. And you may have guessed it, this game title is Pokemon Go. Pokemon Go released in 2016 with a peak player base of 232 million players, also in the year 2016. It was immensely popular not only because it's again a beloved franchise, Pokemon, but that it did solve a lot of the issues that I mentioned earlier. There is no issue of needing a console because anybody with a mobile device that can connect to the internet can download the game. It's also free to play, so there is no monetary barrier to entry, and the game mechanics are extremely simple, so your 7-year-old nephew can even play this game. You simply walk around and throw Pokeballs at Pokemon you see. It's so easy that families can go out and do this together, and it's not uncommon to see be a family of 4 with both parents and kids catching Pokemon together. Pokemon Go has one critical issue, and that being it needs a large player base for the game to be reasonably fun. Besides catching Pokemon, which is a very solo endeavor in the game, another core mechanic are raids, where you fight anything from basic Pokemon to legendary Pokemon in gyms. This mechanic makes the game fun for new and seasoned players alike, because you can participate in raids of varying levels, ranging from 1 to level 6 being the hardest one. However, the 5 to 6 star raids require at least 6 people battling in it at that one time. And the way the raids work, in order to participate, there are 2 types of passes you can use. Every single day in Pokemon Go, you get one free raid pass, which requires you to be physically in front of the Pokemon gym in order to battle. The other type of raid pass that's available is a remote raid pass, which allows you to raid in gyms from around the world. Now, while the regular raid passes are given out for free in the game, the remote raid passes are ones you actually have to spend in-game currency to purchase. So this does bring up an issue when the player base of the game is dwindling. These raid bosses spawn for only 1 hour at a time, and after that hour is up, the boss will despawn. In order to battle this raid, if it's a 5 or 6 star raid, you would need at least 5 or 6 players physically there at the gym when the boss spawns in order to fight it. Pokemon Go's enjoyment severely decreases when there are not enough players physically present at key locations where these raids are spawning in order to take down the Pokemon. There are loopholes around this, as there are apps like PokeGenie that you can download to kind of circumvent this issue and add in players from around the world to remote raid the bosses. However, it's such a massive loophole that this again serves as a huge barrier to entry for a lot of people who want to play the game. Pokemon Go is still extremely popular in certain locations like Japan. From when I went in August 2024, the moment a 5-star legendary Pokemon spawned, there would instantly be 20 people sniping the battle, which is the maximum amount of people that can participate in a regular raid battle to instantly fight the Pokemon. So the culture is well and alive in places like Japan, but without such a robust player base in the location that you live, a huge part of the game becomes essentially unplayable. Now, those are all of the points about Pokemon, but what about the second point that I mentioned, gacha games? The second element that Pokemon TCGP combines in order to make it such a successful game is gacha, an extremely popular and successful game model that has been on the rise, even with IRL gacha, with things like Pop Mart becoming ever popular. Gacha essentially started with CSGO gambling for skins, and it evolved into more fantastical games like Genshin Impact and Honkai Star Rail, where you can go and pull on banners that allow you to get characters that you can use in the game. All of these games start as free to play, so again, no barrier of entry to start playing the game, but over time, you will slowly find yourself sinking more and more money into the game as there are ever frequent releases of new updates. While gacha is an extremely popular game format, especially if you have an addictive personality, me, it's a format that is quite hard for non-gacha players to get into. Many people balk at the idea of spending money for in-game pixels. I'm looking at you, Faker. But the complex currency system of these gacha games don't make it any easier. These games purposely make the currency conversion very difficult and confusing, so you don't know exactly how much money you're spending in the game. This is a reason why it's not one-to-one conversion in terms of $1 equals 1 currency in the game or something of the sort that actually makes some sense. Besides that, also makes it hard for new players to get into gacha games. In this post on HoYoLab by Sapphire Shine Author, who calculated the conversion for Genshin Impact, in Genshin Impact specifically, there are around 3 currencies. The first are Genesis crystals, which are the paid in-game currency, which counts separately than the in-game currency you can earn called Primo Gems. And then finally, there are pulls for non-gacha players, where each pull means each attempt at getting the character from the banner. You're guaranteed to get something, it just might not be the character you wanted. So according to Sapphire's notes, 5 USD gets you 300 Genesis crystals, which also converts 1-to-1 to Primo Gems. It's worth the same. But that gets you 1.8 pulls on the banner because it's 160 Primo Gems per pull. So not only is this already very confusing for seasoned gacha players, it again makes it hard for new players to get into gacha games because for people who are already reluctant to spend money on in-game currency and pixels, they are even more reluctant when they aren't even sure how this money is converting. The final ingredient in the Pokemon TCGP recipe is friendship. Wow. Friends are absolutely OP for gaming. Not only do they get more people into the game, in a way kind of like a pyramid scheme, but wholesome, but they also keep people playing. The big con is many gamers are lonely. And in general, people, because of COVID and things like that, I feel like in this digital age, it is harder and harder to build friendships. And many times you can't guarantee your friends are online when you want to play the game. Games that solely rely on collaboration, games like Overcooked, are games that generally will not have a long-term player base due to the difficulty of arranging collaborations between you and your friends. There are exceptions to this rule, right, with World of Warcraft and D&D being two games that are notoriously built on collaboration and playing with other people. But what I think those two games have to offer that other Pokemon franchises will not is the fact that those games have very, very dedicated and loyal player bases. And those games already have an expectation of this collaboration. Pokemon is a franchise that is built largely upon single-player games, with the exception of Pokemon TCG, the trading card game, but you play with one other person. And with the trading card game, there is the other aspect of card collecting, which is something you can do solo. Pokemon, being a franchise that is largely built upon single-player games, doesn't have that built in. We've spent all of this time talking about Pokemon gacha and friendships, but what about Pokemon TCG, or Pokemon Trading Card Game? The first edition of Pokemon TCG released in Japan in 1996, with the first release coming to the US in 1998. And while again, Pokemon TCG was really popular, I myself remember having Pokemon cards when I was like 5-6 years old, it runs into the same issues that I've mentioned earlier. Money is a barrier of entry. If you're aiming to play TCG versus other players, you would need 60 cards to build a deck. Amongst those 60 cards, you also cannot have more than 4 cards of the same name repeated in your deck. Back in the day when it first released, booster boxes went for around 80 USD, and that's a relatively large investment to put into a game when you aren't sure you're gonna even enjoy it. Another issue with Pokemon TCG, and this is largely an issue that a lot of card games run into in general, is the complexity of information. There are so many cards, and cards cycle between being playable and being unplayable, and you have to know which sets are worth pulling from in general. I'm looking at you, trick-or-treat packs. It's just a large amount of information that makes it hard for new players to get into the game, without having an extremely dedicated friend that absolutely loves the game to hold your hand through the first 20 hours you're playing it. Now, what many people may not realize is Pokemon actually already has a virtual card game called Pokemon TCG Live, where you can open Pokemon packs and battle against other people. So before I get into why I think Pokemon TCG Pocket is so successful, let's break down why Pokemon TCG Live is not. The first big issue with Pokemon TCG Live is how buggy it is, which makes it not very accessible for new players. I myself can attest to this. I've never played Pokemon TCG Live because I simply can't get into the game. I was actively trying to play it, but it wouldn't let me log in with any of my other Pokemon accounts, which I have a couple, and it also would not let me make a brand new account either, so I got jailed without even being able to get into the game. There are packs you can get in the game, but you need codes to get these packs. And these codes are found in real Pokemon packs. When you open Pokemon packs, there is a dummy card that is in there that will have a code written on it, and it will say like, hey, input this code in Pokemon TCG Live so you can open a pack there as well. So again, money serves as a barrier of entry because you need the physical packs to get that code. And I asked my boyfriend about this because he is a religious player of Pokemon TCG Live and also has gone to Pokemon TCG Worlds. According to him, you would need a few codes to start getting your deck built, and then after that you can get the ball rolling and it snowballs from there. But still, you would need those first couple of packs to get the first couple of codes to build your deck. So once again, we've arrived at the issue of money being a barrier to entry. Now, after knowing all of this, in my opinion, Pokemon TCG Pocket serves as an absolute solution to all of these problems, marrying everything together into one perfect game. Pokemon TCGP introduces the Pokemon franchise in a much more digestible way to a new, younger audience. Once again, it's a mobile game, so anybody with a phone and an internet connection can get access to this game. There's an extremely helpful and easy to understand tutorial system that walks you through both core mechanics of the game, opening Pokemon packs, and the AI battling system, where you battle bots across the 4 stages from beginner to expert, so you can always challenge yourself. There is gacha in the game, with the opening of the Pokemon packs. However, the gacha system in Pokemon TCGP is a lot easier to understand for non-gacha players because instead of using the currency of money, it uses the currency of time, which is something that everybody can understand. It's very simple. Every 12 hours, you get a free booster pack to open. There's no need to understand how 160 Genesis crystals converts to 160 Primo Gems, which is what you need to get one pull from the banner. Pokemon TCGP does borrow the cheeky idea of converting currencies, like in Genshin Impact, how you need to buy Genesis crystals to get get pulls. However, instead of converting IRL cash into in-game currency that you then convert to pulls, it converts between money and time again. It does have that translational aspect to slightly confuse users on how much money you're spending, but it keeps it in a system that is very easy to digest because again, time is what you're converting to. And when you spend in-game currency, you use it to buy hourglasses, which shortens the amount of time it would take for you to wait for your Pokemon pack to be ready to open. Friendship is also a core part of Pokemon TCGP as well. Like I mentioned earlier, it has a battle system that you can play with friends, but this battle system is much easier to understand than the regular Pokemon TCG. Instead of playing with decks of 60, you play with a deck of 20. Instead of the winner needing to collect 6 points to win, you only need 3. And cards in Pokemon TCGP actually have different stats than cards used for the regular Pokemon trading card game. Due to all of this, the simplicity of the games and the shortened length of the game, it again appeals to the shortening attention spans of this generation, while still keeping the game fun to play amongst friends. You also have the aspect to battle friends as well, so you can have cheeky little challenges with your best bud to see who has the better Pokemon skills. Based on the friendship aspect, enthusiastic players like myself will actively try to get their friends into the game to play with them. And there is one final aspect that in my opinion serves as great publicity for the game, and it's flexing. It creates a doom cycle that serves as great publicity. You pull cool stuff, you then want to show your friends, and more people talk about the game. More people play the game to pull cool cards, they once again tell their friends, and it rinses and repeats. It is a built-in system to ensure that the game gets more and more popular as long as new packs are constantly being released. And touching once again upon attention spans, this game is very, very low commitment. You have a twice-a-day freebie every 12 hours to open a booster pack, and there's also an option to turn on notifications so you get notified about these free Pokemon packs. And this serves as a great rewiring of your brain. Your brain is slowly getting trained for every 12 hours to open up this game to check and open a Pokemon pack. It keeps players hooked into playing this game on a daily basis without exhausting them due to the extensive options the game has. But this game again has the option to play for a very long time if you would choose to do so, with battles that you can perform against your friends, AI, or opening more Pokemon packs. So in conclusion, large franchises like Pokemon run into an issue over time with staying relevant. Their core player base is aging up, and while they still will have deep love for these titles, it runs into the issue of maybe not having enough time to play the games anymore. This new game, Pokemon TCGP, is an absolute game breaker from Pokemon in terms of its in-game mechanics, how elegantly it works in gacha, which is such a popular system nowadays, and how it incorporates friends and families playing together. In my opinion, Pokemon TCGP solves all of the issues a lot of previous Pokemon titles have had in terms of acquiring a new and larger player base. And I'm curious how much further this game will reach. So, have you played the game yet? And let me know in the comment section below if you like this new format. I kind of wanted to experiment a little bit with the video essay format because if you don't know, I am actually a huge mobile game player. I often don't talk about it, but it is my guilty pleasure and I play a ton of mobile games, with my favorites being mobile gacha games. So when this game came out, me as a mobile game lover, seeing this game come out absolutely itched my brain in a dozen ways I didn't even know was possible. So if you like the game, let me know down below what your favorite part about the game is. Comment down below if you do play it, what your coolest pull is. Mine is that Mewtwo EX with that custom animation. Oh, when I pulled it, my day was made. My day was made. And I would appreciate it so much if you liked and subscribed, because as of filming, we're at 97,600 subscribers on YouTube and we're almost at 100K. I also stream on Twitch 3 days a week, Mondays, Wednesdays, Saturdays at 6 p.m. PST. So I hope to catch you guys there or in another one of my videos. Peace.